So we're on the park road here on this snowy March day. This is actually almost toward June. And you do see some beautiful snow coming down. I'm going to drop that exposure just a notch. But one of the things that gets talked about a lot, and I really wish that the quilt that's over at the Muri Science and Learning Center at the entrance of the park would be moved to the main VC, because it was put together by a group from Healy. It took them a couple of years, from my understanding, to make this quilt. Well, it's all of the different biozones here in the park. Just to the east of me, this is Sable Pass looking this way. We're in the Igloo Canyon right here, and I still need to drop that exposure value. And one of the things that you see is none of our black spruce, none of our white spruce. It's all pretty much willows, little bit of low brush. I call this kind of our bare thoroughfare because it's the perfect territory for the grizzly. Well, the reason why I brought that up and why I'm standing right where I'm at is right here. So let me increase the exposure value so you can see this here. And you're seeing one tall spruce right in this area, and this perfect small little patch of black spruce right here on this little hillside. Now, as the permafrost is retreating within the park infrastructure, the black spruce are able to grow further and further up these hillsides. And this is one of the good examples of what's not an invasive species, but yet within this area, because of altitude, because of the ground that's underneath, it is actually invasive. But the park's never going to move these because of the fact that this is part of life up here. The changes within the terra firma are huge. And I really do appreciate seeing these changes. Probably not in a good way, but I do see these changes and note what's going on. But anyway, tour bus is confused by what I'm doing. Talk to y'all later. This is one of the reasons why I take the transit buses, is I tease my groups. You're getting off the bus and into the food chain. Oh, that's just snow causing that little cut. That's kind of cool looking. So right up here, there's a nice little cut because of snow. But at any rate, one of the things that I talk with my groups a lot is there's been an ongoing study within the park about sound impedance. And in the modern era, myself included, we're all stuck in the trap of the sounds that we're hearing is the buses, the vehicles, the cell phones, the sirens, the modern day society, fans when you're trying to sleep. And by the way, I cannot sleep with a fan. It has to be dead quiet. But back not even 200 years, this is what man heard. And this is what our wildlife heard. We didn't have the vehicles. Now, I'm not against the vehicles. I'm a driver. That's part of what I do. And unfortunately, the motor coach is loud. You can't avoid that. But this right here is what we're supposed to have. And my goodness. Today's one of those days where around every corner it's just absolutely gorgeous. Few nests. I'm almost thinking these nest structures, like in this tree right here, are probably our chickadees. I'm thinking. I'm not seeing anybody around, but seeing a few of those nests. Here would be boreal chickadees, if they are what I'm thinking they are. But the sound impedance study, especially with the landslides, so I'm walking toward the Parks Highway. So I'm on the quote-unquote open section of the road. If I was to walk back this way, so you got the sheep crossing, then you've got Sable, you'll drop down on the East Fork, and then you've got the road closure with Polychrome Pass. And the thing that I've been hearing and talking with people about what they're seeing back there in the backcountry is because there isn't the human encroachment. The wildlife is back to the same way that it should be. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against the bridge. I am driving for Wonder Lake just as much as all of us photographers. But what I'm really wanting is very controversial, because Stony Ridge is probably one of my favorite spots other than Wonder, because Stony Ridge is the first spot where you see Denali base to summit. And you go from the 30% club to the 5% club if you get the chance of seeing Denali from that 63-mile Stony Ridge. And the current TWTs, because of the long-term project over on the Polychrome Pass, the Pretty Rocks area, has kept to the buses, the sound, the people out of the Pretty Rocks area. And the wildlife is back where it should be. And sorry, I just keep on looking around with the fog at its perfect point. The snow is actually lulling down. And I do hear another tour bus. So they're in the video. So, the tour drivers know me, and so they stop to say hi. That is hilarious. But at any rate, the wildlife is back where it should be in its state. And the motto of this park is established because of what I was given that park driver intel of, is The original impact back in the early 1900s of all the gold prospectors was the hunting of the Dall sheep. And so up on these hillsides, I've got my eyes peeled for these tiny little white dots. They're up there, and they're beautiful. And with a day like today, it's still early in the day, I might hike and grab some. But anyway, with the Dall sheep and with the overhunting from the prospectors, they realized that they needed to set aside this land not just as a national park, but that it be protected in a very special way. Because of isolation back in the early 1900s, there wasn't this road. And so human encroachment within Denali National Park and Preserve is a very slow process. Wasn't until you started getting the kind of rail business in the 1920s, people would take their vehicles up the Glen Highway to the Richardson. They would brave the Denali Highway, and they would cut across that, and lo and behold, they get to the little village of Cantwell, put their vehicles on the rail, and then go up to Denali. The original boundary of the park, or Sanctuary River, is the end of the road. So really it was a wilderness experience. Well, another tour bus. He's got the blinker. And whoa. Okay, so bull moose coming up. So I gotta start wrapping this up real quick, or else I'm gonna take a hiatus from this and pick it up, because I'm gonna build up some speed for a second. So I will finish this narrative in a minute. Talk to y'all later. So I'm still tracking the moose, so I'll be a little bit quieter through this section, but so you started seeing the kind of bidding from people like Mary Carey to get the Parks Highway established. And it took a lot, because a lot of the villages, they didn't want to be connected. One of the things that I find that talking with a lot of Alaskans is we value our independence. There's always jokes about why we live here. Well, as the Park Service did the audit of what people wanted to see and what people were seeing, they established our bus service that I both love and strongly use, and I've been a proponent of the bus service because it minimizes our wildlife impact. So when I do, quote unquote, get off the bus and into the food chain, the wildlife that you encounter here within Denali is the same wildlife that you encountered in the 1800s before man really started impacting this land. And it brings down the $1 million or $1 trillion question with inflation. that I have nulled over, talked with people about, thought about. How do you show this absolute gem of a land? Well, encouraging the tourism, because you have to have people come in to be able to see this. But here's the $1 trillion question. How do you minimize our impact from even the buses? And yes, the wildlife does not look at the buses as a threat as much as, like, in Yellowstone, you get the idiots Yellowstone, you got the destruction of a lot of the natural beauty within a lot of the lower 48 parks where, man, it's overtrodden and touched way too much of that land. And I hate saying this, but a lot of the places people don't have a huge amount of respect for. You look around at most places, and along the side of the road, you find refuse, you find trash, and it's not just off the side of the road. It's you hike in, and it doesn't matter where you turn, you can fill a garbage bag. And you take a moment to look here. Other than for the bridge and the steam outs and the road, it is pristine. And that's where, again, that $1 trillion question comes in. How do you minimize our impact within this land? Because you want people to come in and take a look, because this is hallowed territory. I mean, even without the scope of wildlife in the lens right now, the amazingness of this land just cannot be articulated. You can't put what you're seeing in this lens in any sort of articulate way. So you want people to come in. Now, to bring back the original discussion, because I started this little thing by talking about the Polychrome Pass and the road closure at the 43 mile, and with the bridge, and with me driving for Stony Ridge and for Wonder Lake. And this is where I'm going to throw one of the most controversial statements. What I'm a proponent of, we've got some of the wildflowers starting there. Nice. So we've got wildflowers, we've got snow, we've got green up. Just gorgeous. But what I'm a proponent of is to have the TWTs, the Tundra Wilderness Tours, after the bridge is complete, to be still to the 43. And you're going, wait a second, but you just said that you want people to see. Yes, I do. But I want to minimize the backcountry impact. I would be a proponent for a limited shuttle service maybe a limited, like Stony Ridge tour and the camper buses, and that's it. Because what I would love is to be able to walk an hour on this road, like during the shoulder season when this section is closed to all vehicles and you can park at the 30-mile, hike in here, and not see another vehicle. And all you hear is the creek, the birds, the wind. There's no impedance of people. And that's what I really, really want. They're keeping their hazards on a lot, so I'm not gonna go crazy. So that's kind of my thought process of 2027 when they actually are able to open the road. Oh, I know all of us photographers are like jiving to get in the park. The park drivers, I talk with them a lot, and you've seen the recording cut is a couple of the park drivers have stopped and talked. And these are the tour drivers, and I'm just hiking the road with the camera over my shoulder. Well, cameras, plural, but that's a story for another day. And the consensus is that they all want to go further. Because there's the draw of that wilderness. And that brings me with the final piece that I leave with my groups a lot. And I'll leave in this video as well, is one of the reasons why I think, hold on 5 seconds, I'm going to glass for just, you're hearing our state bird. Mr. Ptarmigan, talk again. Of course. Now he's getting me quiet. Alright, I'm going to glass for 5 seconds because I think I see some sheep up there. Talk to you in a minute. So, yep. So, to give you a reference point, first off, tour bus stop now. And I got them in the big lens, so I'll put them in an annotation here. There's 2 doll sheep right on that kind of kitty corner edge line. But one of the things that I would say is that I travel around and I talk with people, and you say, I'm from Alaska. The general reaction is this: oh, it's this wonder. And sorry, it's just too beautiful to not stop and look and glass. My goodness. But one of the things that I also note is that Just like with the tour buses that you're seeing on the road and the transit bus that you saw passing this camera, there are a couple of million people a year that come up to this state to visit. And there's a draw to this land. There's a desire to see this land. I mean, you look back in old writings, Jack London and Robert Service and such, and they are talking about this land. And obviously the resources up here, the gold, the oil, the silver, the fish, the salmon, the wildlife, the glaciers, the scenery, have a draw. But what's the actual draw? Why do people like... There you go. There's the state bird. That's the willow ptarmigan. But what's that major draw? Why does everybody within the world know about this massive chunk of land with only 710,000 people? Well, after a lot of thought and a lot of brainstorming, a lot of talking with guests, a lot of thinking and exploration in my own. There's another doll sheep up there. He's way up there. But this is the last stronghold of a fully intact ecosystem. This is the last place where man does not have to hunt to keep our ecosystem perfect. And this is the last place that is accessible. You've got areas within Siberia that have this, but with politics and with infrastructure, they're not accessible. This is the last accessible place of wilderness where you can hear the silence again, that going back off the sound impedance that all ties in with what I was explaining at the beginning of this little walk. Is the sound impedance. This is the last place where you can accessibly hear silence. And with the modern era of cell phones and loud things, it's a mystery to the masses. And what I think is somewhat of a difficult statement is you watch tour groups and you watch the visitors. Some of them blaze through the state in a couple of days, and some spend a couple of months. But Do they understand, really understand what they're hearing and feeling? So here's a good example. All right, so the transit bus just passed. Right now we've got human imposed noise. And then you get this beautiful quiet. And all these tour buses, when they come in, the people get off and they're still talking. And I don't know, I really don't know if they take that minute to listen. And when I tell people I'm from Alaska, they, in their mind, initially are thinking the mountains, the glaciers, the wildlife, the gold, or the oil. But this is the last accessible place in the world where you get this. And it's truly incomprehensible. And that's what I guess really, really makes it difficult to explain to people is, are you actually feeling and experiencing what you came for? And that's the trillion-dollar question. How do we show this great land? Well, encouraging tourism, like this tour bus that's coming up. But really show this land the way it is. So, yes, there's some cuts and some weird idiosyncrasies in this video because, well, the tour buses are out. They saw the sheep. I don't know. The thought process is insane. And the final little thing that all ties in is a perfect final segue. So you get this little weird R2D2. Okay? Do. Now, this is monitoring a slide called the Xena slide. And this is another one of those slow-moving landslides, just like the blob up on the Dalton Highway and the pretty rocks here in the park. And talking about the black spruce, now we're dropping in elevation, so black spruce are moving up, and this is a little bit more normal. You can see the igloo forest down there. So, elevation-wise, seeing the black spruce up here is not as like, oh crud, things are changing. But as we see changes, it's fascinating watch because this slide is permafrost driven. It's not like a normal landslide where it just suddenly happens and it moves really fast and it's a one and done. This slide right here is slow, creeping, and you don't know you're looking at a slide until you're told. And that's the fascination with this land. Well, one of the fascinations is the constant changes and the variance of all of this. And I appreciate it. Those windows were all fogged up. Some of those people were asleep. And it's here again, that points out one final piece about the tours where I know the tour drivers do an amazing job. I've had the honor and privilege of, over the years, riding on many of the TWTs. I don't do the DNHTs, the Denali Natural History Tours, that often because, well, if I'm going to take the opportunity to get in, I'm going in. And I'm looking for the wildlife. I'm looking for what I'm talking about. And you look at the dynamic of the people and what happens is, again, they get excited with the wildlife and they get excited with seeing everything. So this is one of the construction vehicles for the Pretty Rocks area. They're bringing in supply. And the tour drivers do everything they can to try to convey in their own way what brings people to this place. But how many here? That's where it really is just that trillion-dollar question. Again, I state that seeing the ability of getting further into the park, I'm driving for it. Like counting when that will be able to happen again. The preservation of this immense wilderness becomes the forefront of what this park really was established for. And that really boils down, once more, I just will emphasize that trillion-dollar question and just leave it as the final piece of this video. How do you show this great land, this immense wilderness that I'm walking through, Well, encouraging tourism, but minimizing our impact. And then for you, not just possibly as a viewer of the video or whatever, but when you're here, or when somebody references or whatever of what I'm trying to impart here, what are you expecting? What do you want to feel? And did you experience it? Are you one of those blazing through on a 2-day, I've checked it off the bucket list? Or are you actually reconnecting with what humanity in and of itself is losing? The modern day, the modern era is way too rush. And this, right here, is what this park is truly about. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize. So how do you show this great land? Well, encouraging tourism without impacting our land. Talk to y'all later. God, that's beautiful.